Before we start, I want to show you what ether is in this game. Well, every RPG system like games and fantasy stories always has some energy that governs everything in that game. It's usually what's explained to have magical and supernatural powers within that level. Well, in RPG games in general, mana is commonly used, which is very popular and present in many games overall. But in some stories, like in Naruto for example, chakra is used, in Dragon Ball ki is used, and even in Hunter x Hunter Nen is used. It is very common to create new power systems, and with that come new energies that govern all that magic and everything supernatural. Well, in this game it is the ether. It works more or less the same way, but the ether is somewhat materialized in the form of a fluid, which can have various colors, with each color representing some kind of function of that ether. Well, I'm explaining all this now because it will greatly influence the aesthetics of some things that I will present here. So without further ado, let's go. Before showing all the new things, I hid some new stuff here to be able to show gradually what was changed. So I'm going to start a battle here. Well, right away you can already notice a change from what it used to be. Now you have a semi-interface where there is a marker for your position. Now there's both the marker drawing and various functions of what you can or cannot do in the house where you are. For example, if I'm on the character, I can either use the first aid skill or pass the turn. If I am in a movement area, I can either move or use one of the skills available in that location. If I reach an enemy, it gives me the option to attack, and so on. Each skill has a limitation on where it can be used, and it will be available as soon as you are at the location. This makes it much easier for you to identify what you can and cannot do, and with some animations, this can be made very fluid and fun. It also allowed me to create another function that didn't exist yet. For example, if I use the function here of jump from the jump strike, you can see the area where I will hit, and before the attack I have a confirmation to either proceed or cancel. So now if I click on the wrong function, I can cancel the action before performing it, but if I want to perform it, I have there the entire area of effect that this action will cause, which makes it much easier, because before it didn't have this kind of thing, which is extremely important, especially for large areas, and it will be used here and helps a lot with the interface. So if I use it, you can see it hit exactly the area I wanted. Well, as I said before, with this character I have different abilities, and they work in different ways. Each ability will have a location where it can be used and will be activated according to the position. Where there is none, there will be no more position. One thing that was previously added was the possibility to attack the enemy from behind or from the side, thereby causing more damage. However, this type of function is completely incomplete if I do not give you the option to change your character's direction when it's your turn. For example, if I come here, in this position, the character would be facing backward. But when I pass the turn, see that the marker changed position and I can alter where I will be facing. This way, I can prevent some enemies from accessing my back so easily and causing more damage, which is very useful and greatly helps the game's tactics. As I said before, all the aesthetics of a fluid moving to show the interface comes from the idea of the ether. This would be the natural color of the ether, which is this purplish color, and it is used in some beginner spells, like the spells of the Disciple and Apprentice classes. Some abilities are from beginner spells. A big inspiration, which cannot be hidden here, was for this interface to be similar to the interface of games like Persona 5, and recently made Atos games, like Metaphora e Fantasia, which is a very famous game. It was recently released. Well, this type of interface is a very good interface that uses shortcuts and helps a lot, makes it much easier when performing actions, speeding up the game, and reduce the need for several menus to get things done. Well, and this is not the only news I have to share here. Despite changing quite a bit in terms of game optimization and interface, I am also introducing a new class here, which is the Mage class. Well, almost every RPG has this type of class, and it is one of my favorite classes. It's usually the famous Glass Cannon, a character that deals a lot of damage over a large area. extremely versatile, but usually a more fragile character. Well, considering this type of game, where you can basically create your class by mixing various elements from other classes, it can be quite useful to use the mage, as well as create spells that destroy various enemies with facts. So, I'm going to show here some of the spells that have already been made for the mage. Possibly new levels will be made for these spells, okay? These spells are still somewhat basic for now, but I have a little system in mind, which will be the intelligent skill system that I will still add. And once I add it, I will create new levels for the skills, both fire and ice. Well, initially to show here, I have to say that the magic ether, which is the one responsible for using magic, is the blue ether. You can see that each skill has a different color of ether. Like if I use here, for example, a basic apprentice skill, which is the ether strike, it will be the purple ether, which is this naturally colored ether. But when I use magic, like fire, it can be seen that the blue ether formation was used to materialize the fire and cause damage to the enemy. The same thing happens with ice magic, and it has its peculiarities. It is not the only difference of having different elements. I will try to use it here to see that each magic, both fire and ice magic, can cause some negative effects. And there are some particularities. For example, fire magic deals a little more damage than ice magic and has a chance to cause the negative effect of blindness. By my bad luck, I'm not managing to hit here, but the chance is actually quite high. It's just the bad luck of RNG. Well, I'll keep trying here, and as soon as I succeed, I'll show you the effects. Right. I did it. Now you can see that the blind effect occurred, which is the effect on this enemy. This causes all its accuracy to be reduced by half during the effect. This doesn't mean it will have half the chance to hit me with an attack, it's just its accuracy that is reduced by half. And the chance of landing an attack also considers my dodge chance. So it doesn't help if cutting his accuracy in half and having almost no evasion, which is more or less the case here. I have the standard evasion, which is 10% evasion. In this case, when I cut his accuracy in half, it became more or less a 20% chance of evasion. Here it's not much, but it scales a lot with your evasion. If I had, for example, an evasion of 30% or 40%, this would be much more useful, much more effective. Well, I will try here to cause the ice effect, so you can see that it is an effect quite a bit better. There's a slightly lower chance of getting it right. Ready? It causes the paralysis effect, okay? That's the name I gave it, okay? It could be this name is a bit confusing, so maybe I'll change it, but it basically will make your enemy able to move only half the spaces they would normally move. Like here, I can move 4 spaces. If I had been hit with the paralysis effect, I could walk only 2. This lasts for the entire duration of the effect, which is actually quite useful, right? You can use this in very tactical and very good ways, and as it is a better effect than the fire effect, I had to balance this by slightly reducing the ice damage and reducing the chance of landing the effect a bit. But in the end, it is a much more useful effect than the fire one. And it depends on what you want or don't want to do. If you want to deal a little more damage or have the chance to cause a better effect. Well, the last ability made for him is the Yeti Tornado. As you can see, it's an ability with a much larger area than the others, and it also causes much greater damage. It's like the mage's ultimate ability, but in return, it has a longer cast time and uses much more mana to be used. I hit practically all the enemies and almost defeated them all. There's a good chance I might lose this fight. I no longer have that absurd amount of life I had before to carry out the actions. To demonstrate for you, but you could see that I managed to kill 3 enemies here at the same time and almost killed the other. It's a really strong ability, and that's the idea. It has a high cost and is an extremely useful, extremely strong ability. Showing a bit here of the design I use for the class. I made a slightly different wizard, without that giant wizard hat. It looks like a character from Harry Potter, some generally used in Final Fantasy characters, and I decided to make this mage with a hood and a robe that also conveys this mage idea. There are some mages in some games that also use this aesthetic that I really like, and I did this to specifically reserve that witch or wizard aesthetic for another class, which is a class that I will show here, that I will also create. It will be one of the wizard's revolutions, but for now, the wizard will have this appearance, and I will also create some new levels for skills in both fire and ice, because it will practically be new levels to increase the damage of the abilities, with a slightly higher mana cost. But first, I will need to introduce here the mechanics of smart skills, which is something I want to do, but I needed to have all this interface, all these things before, so that this smart skills course can work. And it will also be used in the use of items like potions and antidotes. Items for reviving, all these things will be included in the smart abilities. This will greatly ease the use of these abilities. The idea here is to minimize menu navigation as much as possible, to make the game a bit more dynamic and not get stuck a lot. That's why the use of shortcuts. That's for all this aesthetic, all this style, and all this acceleration, but always keeping everything very clear and as tactical as possible, so you can understand everything that's happening on the screen, so you have a reaction time, so you can do everything you need to do, and yet not be an extremely slow game and have a good dynamic. Well, for now, that's what I'm going to show you. I wanted to tell everyone who follows here, if you want to take a look at my other games, I will leave the link to the games in the description. There's also Ninja Monkey, which is a game that I have already released on Steam. It is a very good game. Practically everyone who played it liked it. It has several hours of gameplay. It is a really fun game. I will also leave Kid Jack here. It is one of the first games I made. Totally grateful. Whoever wants to take a look. And I would like to ask you to comment, like, and show it to your friends, and to everyone who enjoys this style of game, because it's a somewhat niche style, so it's good to show it to people who like it, because those who like it will enjoy following. If you don't enjoy following along, that's okay too. You don't have to, just leave, but it's nice to introduce it to people, so it would be great if you could do that, and very soon I will bring more news, these updates. It took me a while to create this interface, so in the end, I could only make one class for this week, but I already have a lot planned, and soon I'll bring more updates. So that's it, and bye.